Hello everybody, welcome to my channel. Today we are unboxing and reviewing the 72 oil pastel set from Paul Rubens. I was very excited when they asked me if I wanted to try it. I've heard other people say that they are really creamy and soft, almost as good as Sennelier's dupes, so I'm very curious about them. They also kindly sent me their oil pastel paper, which is exciting. I don't think I ever tried oil pastel paper before. You might not know that the word Haiya is not an actual word in Chinese. However, it does imply one of the words means to press. So I'm thinking maybe they're implying that these oil pastels are great to use together with palette knives or something like that. They also had these impasto marks on the packaging, so I think that's what they mean. And here are the color selections. Aren't they just gorgeous? I absolutely love this color selection and it looks very well rounded. A lot of saturated colors, but also a few very beautiful muted colors. As I took a closer look at the color numbers and names, I noticed that they're almost exactly the same as Sennelier, even their number system, and it turned out that this 72 color selection is almost exactly the same as Sennelier's 72 color set. So I'm not surprised that some might consider this as their dupe. I compared the color Midnight Blue from both brands and it feels very similar. There's a slight difference in hue, and when I use a blending tool it feels like Sennelier is a little bit more pigmented. But I'm mostly impressed by Paul Rubens' white. I'm surprised by how creamy the texture felt and how well it blended with the blue. I've never tried any other white oil pastel that came so close to Sennelier's texture, and I think in this case it performed even better. It is reflected in the price though from where I live. If I'm to get a set of 8 Paul Rubens white oil pastels, it is just a little bit cheaper than Sennelier, but not a huge price difference like their color sets. Okay, now let's start swatching. I decided to use my own oil paper because I wanted to make a color wheel layout. I noticed that on some oil pastels, the names and numbers are printed on the back end of the paper and some other ones are on the front. So that's a bit confusing, and for the ones that are printed on the front, once you tear that piece of paper off, you won't have the color information anymore. Some colors, I think my Naples yellow, they did have a bit of oil seeped out of the wrapping paper, but this only happened to one of my 72 oil pastels, so hopefully this won't continue to happen. In my personal opinion, since it did say on the packaging, let more people like Chinese colors, it would be more admirable if they could be more original with their color names and selections. I know other Chinese brands of oil pastels like Culox has the Morandi set, which is also very popular. So maybe they could come up with some like Chinese traditional color names or something. I just think the quality is great, but the personality is a bit lacking here. This is how all the color look together on the color wheel. Some color weren't exactly where they should be. It's kind of a challenge to find the right spot for every color, but there we go. The next thing I'm going to do is to put them to test to see how they behave in blending techniques. I got some of these ideas from Misako Fludin's video. She's such a prolific painter. I wish I could paint like her someday. Another artist, Lena Rivo, has a free ebook about oil pastels. It is a 72 pages ebook with in-depth knowledge about everything you need to know about oil pastels. She's very generous to offer this for free. It even teaches you how to melt oil pastels to make your own colors, and I'm very tempted to try this. Now back to the oil pastels. They blended just like how you expect them to be. Again, almost identical with Sennelier. If this was a blind test, I don't think I would know the difference. I feel like since I paint mostly in watercolor, I'm not exactly sure what I'm looking for here, and to be honest with you, I don't know how to use most of these techniques in a painting. Like the paint pusher or cotton swab, it's very satisfying to play around, but I'm not sure it's predictable enough for me to use this tool in a painting. Or maybe I just haven't painted enough. Nothing to do with Paul Rubens oil pastels, of course. It's just a medium that I don't use every day because of the messiness. So I guess what I'm saying is I have no idea what I'm doing. But hopefully it still gives you an idea about how these oil pastels work. It's apparent that this paper is not made to be used with linseed oil or paint thinner. It did seep onto the backside of the paper. Again, this is not something I use in my painting process, so I'm not too concerned. I actually really like the paper they sent me. It's very smooth and the oil pastel glides on very nicely. This test is done a while ago with my other oil pastels. It is on a piece of Georgian oil paper and it handled the linseed oil and thinner much better. Alright, the next thing I want to do is palette knife. I love using palette knife with oil pastels, especially mixing them kind of like oil paint on a separate surface. I have a video showing how I do that over watercolor, and I have seen some other artists using only oil pastels with palette knife for the entire painting. The result is just absolutely stunning, but the process would be a bit laborious for me. No matter how soft the oil pastels are, it's just impossible for them to be as soft as oil paint, which is like the consistency of toothpaste. In order for oil pastel painting to get that very gooey consistency, you have to use a lot of oil pastel and not be afraid to lay down quite a bit of paint. You'll see later when I start painting, but this is what I personally love. I love the smears and icing on the cake kind of consistency. It's just so tactile and satisfying. You can try with all sorts of tools you have to experiment with mark making. Just be aware that they are very, very difficult to wash off and it will stain some materials, so you want to use tools that can be easily wiped clean. I use a clear plastic palette, and to clean oil pastels, you can use a scraper. And I also got a bottle of oil pastel cleaner. I got this one in China. I'm not sure if it's available on Amazon. It feels almost like the makeup remover, like the oily kind, and it doesn't smell anything, very easy to use. I have seen artists using colored pencil over oil pastels. I just wonder how it works. I think I used way too much paint on the first 2 layers, so the pencil kind of just scraped off the top layer of the paint. And it didn't really make the kind of mark I was looking for. But the white color pencil kind of worked. It did leave some white marks, which I'm a bit surprised to see. The last thing, I promise this is the last thing now before we start painting, I want to see how both Paul Rubens and Snowy oil pastels react to fixative. So I'm just choosing a few similar colors from both brands. Paul Rubens are the ones on the left, and you can tell that they are very similar. I don't have all the colors from Snowy to compare with Paul Rubens, so I'm just choosing a few of my favorites, the ones that look similar in hue. I noticed in some colors, Snowy is a little bit more vibrant and pigmented. I think if I have to complain, the Paul Rubens did have a bit of a plasticky smell. I wasn't quite sure where that smell come from, but every time I open the box I can smell it. It's not as bad as Pentel oil pastels, and I did put my nose really close in the box trying to sniff it out for science. And it turned out to be that piece of black protective foam, because the oil pastels themselves don't smell much. So that's just something to be aware of if you're buying this for yourself or a present. It's great value for the price. You're getting a lot of paint, especially if you're a beginner or just want to paint bigger pieces. I don't want it to feel very precious with your materials. However, it just doesn't have that luxurious feeling like Sennelier. You can also see that in the brown color when I mixed white into it. Sennelier, I think, was their brown pink. The pigment load is so high. The similar brown color from Paul Rubens wasn't quite there. But Paul Rubens black actually felt a little bit better than Sennelier in my opinion. It laid down with a more pleasant hand feel. Now I'm going to spray this with the fixative to see how they react, and it doesn't look like there's much of a difference. Anyway, let's start painting. I've been wanting to paint some snowy winter landscapes lately. I found this photo from a ski trip a few years ago, and I'm curious to see if these oil pastels are able to create very muted, earthy color palette. See how quickly I destroyed the tip of this cold gray. I don't know why I looked so aggressive. And I'm not sure how helpful is this bullet-shaped tip, but yeah, they run down very, very quickly, in the way I like to paint at least. I'm using a limited palette here. I don't have enough space to put all 72 colors in the frame, so I just chose a few colors that I think I would need. So when I need to have a purple color, I had to mix the blue and pink on the palette instead of taking a purple from the box. I'm really glad I did this. I think it helped with the color harmony. I don't know about you, but this year I realized that I prefer painting or drawing mediums that allow me to mix colors by myself, instead of choosing from a lot of different colors like markers or colored pencils. I noticed that putting down the pen and pick up another one, that motion takes me out of the flow, especially if I have to take off the cap and put it back on, like with most of the markers. And I get a bit, not as much as frustrated or annoyed, it just takes me out of the painting process. Oil pastels are the only kind that I can tolerate because it is a mixable medium, and it also compensates with their super creamy texture. Now I will let you watch the rest of this painting process in peace, and I will be back in a minute. For the second painting, I wanted to choose a more vibrant, darker colors to see how they perform. So I decided to paint this Northern Light. I will link the reference in the description if you also want to give it a try. I didn't like this painting as much as the other one, but I'm still really happy about the quality of these oil pastels. Again, not sure if it's me having a heavy hand, but I need to peel back the paper on this one as well. It looks like I'm gonna go through these oil pastels pretty quickly. For this painting, I didn't limit how much color I can use, and I was a little bit unplanned. I was just copying the color I see from the reference. So this one did feel a little less creative in general, and I also chose not to mix any color on the palette because I know many of you guys don't do that. I want to show you how it's like to paint with these without a separate mixing space. I think if I was using the Sennelier oil pastels, the sky part, maybe it could be a bit more vibrant, especially the turquoise colors. But I'm still quite happy with how it turned out. And by the way, if you're planning to get this set of oil pastels, they are having a 20% discount during the Black Week. I will put the link in the description, and I forgot to say that this video is not sponsored, although I did ask them if they want to sponsor this video. They said they didn't have the budget this time, but either way, I would have just give you my honest opinion about them. I will try my best to post this video before Black Friday, so you can make the decision if you want to buy them. So this is how the painting looks like. I especially like the cabin in there. It looks like it's very warm inside, and I think that's pretty cute. I hope you enjoyed watching this video. Let me know if you have tried these oil pastels before and what you think of them. The next video is going to be about my favorite art supplies for 2024. It's going to take a while to make, but I hope you're looking forward to it. It's going to be a lot of fun. Goodbye!